Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to Why Does This Exist? I am your host, Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And if you are one of a ragtag group of rogues that has taken over the internet and Wall Street today, well, congratulations. We hope you made a lot of money. Yeah. And, you know, we're glad that you caught a very severe case of stigmatomoniosis.
Yeah. This is just like, this is like the definition of eating the rich. I would say.
Yeah, and now the rich, the rich is starting to eat itself.
George Carlin used to say it's a big club and you ain't in it. Well, guess what?
Well,
guess what?
There's a new club.
The people just broke down the door and started drinking all the booze in the bar. So now you're in it.
Yeah. I mean, this was. I don't even know if this is even right to say, but this is like the digital version of what we saw 3 weeks ago of storming the Capitol. They just It was nuts. It was nuts. People did it in this ragtag group of rogues. I love saying that. Known as Wall Street Bets. We're not going to become like a podcast that talks about finances, but I felt like this moment was one of those how did this exist and why does this exist moments, because this was not supposed to happen by any means. But as we talked about beforehand, this was kind of a case of similar to Nixon in the Nixon movie where the reporter's interviewing Nixon and Nixon is like, when the president does it, it's not illegal. And the other guy's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like Wall Street does shorting all the time, and like hedge funds, their power plays, their plays are mostly shorting. A lot of hedge fund activity, like their biggest gains comes from shorts, and they got millions of dollar bonuses for like doing this, and they manipulate the markets on their own, and like they know that they're doing it. It's well planned. It's okay when they do it, but like when a ragtag group of rogues starts a Reddit group and like decides, no, we're gonna like give them a taste of their own medicine, and then Wall Street loses big.
Yeah.
Where like other hedge funds have to bail them out now. Like suddenly that's a problem. I don't understand. Either it's a free market. Either it's all on the table or none of it is.
Well, that's the thing. It's not a free market, really.
No, it's not.
And this just shows it. Like the mask has now come off, and everybody can see what it really is. It's like, and I find it hilarious that Robinhood has taken off their mask because they've always like prided themselves being this, it's Wall Street for the everyman. Anybody can trade on Wall Street with Robinhood,
Of course, but they're backed by a Citadel, which is a hedge fund. What a surprise.
They've now essentially just, become the Sheriff of Nottingham, shutting down trading on GameStop. And it's just like, well, now the mask is off. We know what's really going on. It's a big club and you ain't in it. But guess what? Now the people are breaking down the doors. And that's,
Well, if you think that was ugly, you should see what the hell happens. Honestly, I have no idea what will happen, but it's just crazy. Like,
I imagine the government's going to step in before anything.
I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be
they're already talking about doing that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like these hedge funds cry to daddy and and like Uncle Sam walks in and allows some kind of a thing where they can do they essentially just like buy GameStop over the weekend and
Yeah.
then like liquidate it and like take it private on Monday. None
That's
of that would surprise me.
No, I wouldn't. But let them do it, because that's just going to piss more people off. And again, like, I haven't seen anything that has brought together all sides of the political spectrum as this has since probably the Occupy Wall Street protests.
No, it's wild stuff, man.
It's really like, like you think back to that, it was like, libertarians, conservatives, liberals, socialists, everyone was like, wow, Wall Street really sucks and we're going to protest about it. Well, now this is like the same exact thing. Like, you have people as diverse as like AOC and Ted Cruz, like, saying, why is this, like, why all of a sudden is Robinhood stopping trading? Like, why isn't the everyman allowed to do this? And again, you couldn't be as far apart politically as those two are, and yet you go. They're agreeing with each other about it.
She doesn't want to work with him, but he extended the olive branch, and AOC was like, no, like, people who like are part of your party like tried to murder me 3 weeks ago in the Capitol building.
Yeah.
So like I understand. I got you, AOC, but I just thought that this was just funny.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk and like and Mark Cuban are like, oh wait, so this is bullshit.
Yeah. Mark Cuban loves what's happening. He loves that this happened.
Oh no, I'm glad he does.
Everyone wants to talk about how free. America should be a free market, and it's like, yeah, it should be. And the way Wall Street works now, it's not a free market.
Yeah,
so
if it actually were, people would be able to get ahead.
Right.
Because like this is all that happened was just people tried to do exactly what Wall Street does to get ahead, and Wall Street didn't like it. It's kind of like when it's like it's pretty much like it's like if Captain Hook was like trying to kill Peter Pan, and then like Blackbeard showed up and shot Peter Pan in front of Captain Hook.
Yeah.
Which that only reminds me, just so I could segue into Hook is on Netflix, and I watched it the other day for the first time, and like there's that part in the very beginning where like she's talking to Robin Williams. Wendy is talking to Robin Williams, and she's like, "I'm a bond trader," and she's like, "You became a pirate, Peter." And that's still one of the best lines in that movie. All right, so let's actually start, because this is we've already gotten too deep. We're behind your Wall Street bets. We hope you guys keep sticking it to the man, and we hope that like some real change actually does happen, where like the little guy can actually get ahead. Yeah. But we actually had a comment on our very first podcast on Hi, Honey, I'm Home. So if you listen to it, thank you very much. We're now on Spotify as well, which is some pretty big news. We're also on TuneIn. I've got to do some stuff to try to get us on Apple and Pandora. So we will see. We shall see, but we will be there. And if you're joining us just now, you can find us on patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. And you can get you can watch some of our cool free bonus things if you subscribe and you donate to us to help us keep everything going and just help us, pay our bills a little bit easier. There's a watch along right now of Hi, Honey, I'm Home's only aired episode. If we can ever find a way to track down the other 7 that never were aired, that would be very helpful, and we would be very grateful.
I'm sure it's like some rich dude probably has it like locked up in his like private stash somewhere in this mansion.
Well, I think one of the actors had it, but let's not start talking about this again.
Yes.
We have an episode. We have an episode about it. You can listen to that, and you can listen to that on whydoesthisexistpodcast.podbean.com or YouTube, and just look for Why Does This Exist? And if you want to be clever, subscribe to us. Like our stuff, comment. You can either listen to the whole show or you can listen to little bits and pieces because we want to help you out. We're here supporting the little guy. Maybe you don't have an hour. Maybe you have 10 minutes. Well, we've got you covered. And if you have anything weird and strange that you would like to talk to, that you would like us to talk about, like this guy that we're about to give a shout out, you can send us questions to whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com, and you can even put it in a comment on YouTube if you really want to. If you don't feel like emailing us or you don't remember, just go on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, Why Does This Exist, and leave a comment suggesting that what we should cover. We're not going to do it on every episode. We might try to get to it as a separate episode on its own. We'll get to that. But we had a comment from this dude right here. Let me try to pull it up. He's a froggy one. He's a froggy one. What is his name? From Frogger5687. Thank you for appreciating the show. He goes, "Can you guys talk about golfing?" I wouldn't mind talking about golfing. We're not going to do it on this show, but I think there's a place for it.
I think it's definitely a interesting, like, weird thing. It's a weird sport.
It is a strange sport.
It's the only sport where, like, you're to win you have to get less points, than your opponent.
Yeah, and also people just dress funny. I don't know if they just do that or if it's like, or if that's just what you do, but I don't know. But we can talk about golfing, and we can also try to do like an episode in the future on just weird sports in general, and like golfing will be a part of that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Frogger5687. We will try to do our best, and we'll try to get that to you as soon as we can. We've got a couple more shows in the pipeline. Perhaps that can be in a couple of weeks. But anyway, let's start talking about the actual show that we were going to talk about, which is not a show.
No.
It is a beautiful, wonderful game that first came out in 1998 on the Nintendo 64. It's my favorite game on that console for sure. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's constantly switching back between first and second. It's like it's just in a perpetual battle with Mega Man X for the Super Nintendo. We're talking, of course, about a bear and his Breagle. We're talking about Banjo Kazooie.
Yep, Banjo Kazooie,
made by Rare.
Made by Rare. Very classic action 3D platformer. From like really the golden age of platformers, I think. Like the mid to late 90s was, on both the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation was the age of the platformer. And Banjo-Kazooie was definitely in the top of that. I would say it's probably my favorite platformer of all time.
Yeah, hands down.
Not my favorite game on the console because I'm a huge Zelda fan, so Zelda was always my number one. But Banjo-Kazooie was definitely top 5 for me.
Zelda is in my top 3 for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, a great, amazing game, and a game that is so weird. Like you would never think it would have worked the way it did, because it was, almost like Disney-like in the way the characters were. It's almost like going on like Splash Mountain. Like that's the kind of characters there are
without the racism, but yes.
Yes, yeah. And just overall a great game, and a game that like still holds up today. Like you could pick it up now in 2021, literally 23 years after the game came out, and it's still good. And not only that, the comedy and is still good. It's still funny. Like the jokes are hilarious, and they hold up today. 21 years later.
Like I loved how there's just innuendos after innuendo after innuendo.
Oh, yeah.
And it's it's just like a game for everybody.
It is.
But
it's
like
great.
the concept just is very is what makes the game weird. It's not like it's not necessarily that it's a platform game where like you're a bear. Like, all right, that like it's a video game. Sure, there could like Mario is a plumber that goes to fight a dragon that saves a princess from a castle,
right? And
like there's mushroom people living in the kingdom. That's weird on its own, but everybody knows about that one. Everybody knows about Banjo-Kazooie too, but it's not as like I'd say it's not as like they're not like the figurehead of Nintendo.
No, Super Mario 64 is definitely, I think, in terms of objectively, it's probably the top platformer. I'm sure it sold more than Banjo did because Banjo Kazooie was a little bit more. I mean, again, Rare was a big publisher then, but a lot of the the Nintendo games were like kind of took center stage, like the Nintendo only IPs, so like Mario, Zelda, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so like when Rare made, I think, the best Nintendo 64 games. Again, aside from Zelda, like you had Banjo Kazooie, Jet Force Gemini, Donkey Kong 64, Killer Instinct Gold. Like there was so many good Rare games that were on the Nintendo 64.
Well, they had hit after hit after hit.
It was like,
and then you have Conker's Bad Fur Day, which we could talk about on another episode too.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that was also just. It wasn't necessarily a hit because it kind of came at the end of the console's life, so it was like kind of put in a weird spot. Conker's Bad Fur Day, and also it had an M rating. But it was still like that is worth talking about in another episode by itself.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way Banjo Kazooie came around, because Banjo started out as a character. He was one of the side characters in Diddy Kong Racing, one of the characters that you could play as in Diddy Kong Racing.
Right.
And so was Conker. So, Rare kind of had this cast of characters that they wanted to use. And like, I don't know if they planned on making more of those Diddy Kong Racing characters have their own series, or if it was just going to be.
Well, there was supposed to be another Diddy Kong Racing for the GameCube that, like, in the initial GameCube launch trailer, there was like a demo that had what would have been a Diddy Kong Racing sequel and it just never happened for some reason. I'm not sure if it had anything to do. I'm not sure if it happened around the time that like Microsoft bought Xbox. So like
it probably was about the.
It may have been. Rare, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because Microsoft bought Rare in the early 2000s because what was that? Grab by the Ghoulies was on the original Xbox, and I think that came out in 2002 or 2003.
That game I think is really underrated. Like I've played it. It actually is a pretty fun game.
I've never actually played it.
It's not bad, and it has like that kitschy little like grab by the ghoulies thing in the beginning. The intro kind of cracks me up.
But yeah, I mean, and you think about Rare also had GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which their versatility as a game developer, it was crazy because they're making games like platform games like Banjo Kazooie that are kind of cute and for more for kids. And then all the way up to Perfect Dark, which is, an M-rated spy thriller first-person shooter.
Yeah, and then you have Jet Force Gemini that kind of combines shooter and platform, which hadn't really been done.
No, that was definitely the first real successful third-person kind of action platformer shooter kind of game, I think. It had the elements of like collecting things like there are other platforms like Banjo Kazooie and like Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong 64 had. But overall, like it just an amazing. The gameplay itself is just so good, and you would never think it's like because it's you'd think it's so tedious because you have to collect all these different items every level, and it but like they did such unique things with each level. The level design was amazing.
Oh yeah,
and every level. Like, this is the time N64 where, levels couldn't be that big because obviously they only had a certain amount of space on the cartridge. So they couldn't make these huge, gigantic levels. But every level felt like an adventure. Like, it was like, it felt huge. Like, especially the second level in, the island level in Banjo Kazooie. I forget the name of it.
No, not Gangplank Galleon. No, Gangplank Galleon is in Donkey Kong 64, which is also a great one.
Yeah. But like it's huge. The level's gigantic for an N64 game. It was like Mario 64 has some decent sized levels, but again, that came out like way earlier in the N64's life cycle because it was a launch title. So, it came out in Japan in '96, and but Banjo Kazooie came out in '98, so they had that extra little amount of time to kind of refine the craft and really push the limits of the N64, the
Yeah.
hardware.
Yeah, and also like the thing that really ties it together is the music.
Oh yeah.
Like we haven't even gotten to talk about the plot, which is the reason why on paper this is just weird and should not exist. Um, but the music was by Grant Kirkhope, and
Hmm.
he did a lot of the Rare stuff, and
Yes.
also Tim Stamper was one of the main artists too, as well
Uh,
as Steve Mails, John
oh,
Nash, Kevin Bayliss. These are the people that I've got up here. Greg Miles was
mhm.
good, and also Tim Stamper's brother Chris also produced this. So like it was a very tiny team,
Hmm. Oh
and a
yeah.
lot of them went on to go to make Ukulele, which could be another episode where there's just so much
Oh yeah.
stuff where like these guys they
I mean,
they're such innovators in the gaming industry and they're rarely spoken about, and it's
I
just
think
a
we should
shame.
definitely talk about ukulele a little bit because I think ukulele really is the Banjo Kazooie that never was. You know, it
Yeah, but
was
I think we should talk about that a little bit later. Let's keep it on
okay.
just Banjo Kazooie. So like the music is just whimsical the whole time, and every level
Yeah,
has it gives the level its own flavor.
I would like to,
Even like
but
and it works with the design too.
yeah,
Like it's
from
bouncy or it's gloomy if it has to be.
from a sound design standpoint, what Grant Kirkhope was able to do with the score, where it changes like the basic. The tempo and the motif is the same throughout, but
Yes,
every
it's
little
the
area
teddy.
you go through.
Well, the motif is the teddy bear's picnic.
Yes, yeah, yeah, almost. It's not the same exact,
It's
but yes, you're
no, but
right.
it's very similar.
Right.
Like all of the I want to say the root notes are
Hmm.
all teddy bear's picnic.
Yes. Um, and it kind of it's almost like an old school cartoon feel where it like, everywhere you go, the music really follows you. It like works with everything you're doing. But then
Yeah.
also like it changes. So like, you'll be walking around and then you go in the water and the music changes, makes it like seem like it's more underwater, but it keeps the same
Right,
tempo.
like
There's
it
like
gets a good use of the xylophone.
a seamless transition between, different areas with the music. Um, so that was a really innovative thing that I think really hadn't been done too much up until that point. Like I think Banjo Kazooie is really the first one to have like a dynamic music that changed as you went from area to area seamlessly.
Yeah, that's the only I can't think of anything else what really happened like that.
Not at that time,
Unless it
definitely.
would no, I don't think so at all. Like it either would drastically change from one track to another, but there
Right,
would never be like it would never be along the same lines, and you would just suddenly get that setting.
right.
Like the ambience just worked, and like you'd hear the little bubbles blooping if you went
Hmm.
underwater and everything.
Yeah,
Even the sound effects, because like one of my favorite things about the game is that like there's no voice actors
yeah,
really. It's just like you get the dialogue on the screen, and it's like all these weird noises, and everybody
yeah.
has their own on thing. Like it's like ah ooh, ah ooh, ah
Yeah,
ah ooh,
yeah.
ah.
Uh, I also like how everything has like is personified. Like literally the stupidest items will talk to you. Like and they'll
Oh
have
yeah,
little eyeballs and a mouth and stuff. Like anything. It's like the whole world is anthropomorphized, and I think it's pretty funny. And I mean it's very classic cartoon, you know, old school like Looney Tunes, feel to it.
yeah. Well, I mean, even the moves that Banjo has with Kazooie is
Hmm.
like are very cartoonish. Like he'll
Yeah.
shoot like she shoots eggs out of
Right.
her beak and he holds her like a shotgun. That's in the second one. In the first one, she
Yeah.
just shoots it out of the backpack. Kazooie
Yeah.
mostly stays in the backpack the entire time.
Yeah.
And then you could transform into other things when you go to Mumbo Jumbo. He's like a shaman dude.
Hmm.
Um, and you meet. Okay, so let's get to the plot of this game as to why it shouldn't exist on paper. So
Yeah.
Banjo is a bear. Kazooie is a weird bird thing called they call a breagle. Kazooie lives in his backpack, right?
Yeah.
So Banjo. So that's why they're Banjo Kazooie. It's Banjo and Kazooie. They're not married or friends, or I don't even know if they're friends. They don't seem to really like each other that much either. They're always picking on each other.
Yeah.
Um, And like Kazooie's like it's kind of like I'll meet my wife, the old ball and chain kind of thing, but like there's no like I don't know. It's a weird
It's very much
dynamic.
like it's like an Abbott and Costello
yes,
kind of dynamic
yes.
where like they just they're
They
like partners.
coexist.
They coexist, but they always fight each other, like an odd couple kind of thing.
Yeah. So anyway, so Banjo. So one fine day, one fine day, Banjo and Kazooie are trotting along, and they're hanging out with his sister Tootie, who is also a bear. And they're hanging out with Bottles the mole, who is a mole that wears glasses, and they live on Spiral Mountain in like a shanty, and there's a wit and overlooking Spiral Mountain is the mountain, but like living in the mountain is a witch, and it's her witch's lair, and the mountain of course looks like her face, and the witch's name is Gruntilda.
And she's like the most stereotypical witch, the green skin, the pointed hat, the black robes, like the Wicked Witch of the West, essentially. It's that archetype of a witch.
Yeah, and so like Tootie's young, and I guess she's pretty. I don't know how. There's no age limit on like we don't really know how old they are. So like Tootie could be 8, or Tootie could be like 17
30.
or whatever, or 30. I don't know. And like Gruntilda's like, I want to be hot. Like Gruntilda's like she's out, like she's very overweight. She's a witch. She's not good looking. She's gross. Right.
Yeah, she's got warts and green skin.
Yeah, and she has like her henchman. What's his name? Chronicle? No, not Kronk. Kronk was Emperor's New Groove's henchman.
Yeah.
Starts with a K, I think.
Yeah, it's something like Crunk or Kronk or something. It's like a stereotypical like orc or ogre name. Like just like a.
Yeah. So anyway, she kidnaps Tootie, and like she's like, I'm gonna steal her, and then I'm gonna sap her like life force in this machine, and then I'm gonna be beautiful, and then like Banjo Kazooie have to save her, and like Bottles teaches them moves. How he learned these moves, I don't know. That's never explained to us. But yeah, that's the game. So they have to traverse all these different stages, and like so that they can get to Gruntilda to save her. And they also meet these cool little rainbow colored guys, which there's 5 in every episode of the many things that you collect in this game. Like
Jinjos.
Yes, the Jinjos. And they're a lot of fun, and they're like trapped, and like when you free them, they like spin around you, and then they go Jinjo.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they like form a super Jinjo, and they like destroy Gruntilda if you beat in the game.
Yeah.
It's a pretty epic last boss battle, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was hard for me like when I was a kid. I think I didn't beat her. I remember I beat Banjo Tooie, the sequel, after before I had ever really beaten Banjo Kazooie.
Yeah, I mean the difficulty definitely holds up to this day. It's Nintendo hard.
Yeah, it's still a tough game. It's not Ninja Gaiden by any means, but it's hard.
The learning curve is not steep. It's a very gradual learning curve. So they work you again. This goes back to how good the level design is that they work you up to the more difficult stuff. You're not starting out like getting your ass kicked in the first 5 minutes. Like the first 2, 3, 4 levels are pretty easy, and then it gets a little harder and a little harder, and then there's more like challenging stuff that you have to do and stuff. I think what was it? Was TikTok Woods the one where it's like different seasons you go to? That was a pretty hard level.
Yeah, that's the one that I don't like. I think it's Click Clock Wood.
The season. Yeah, Click Clock Wood.
That's the only level that I really didn't like.
And you had to change the seasons like before you went in, and it was like there was different puzzles you had to solve in the different seasons.
The dynamic was cool, and like in in Donkey Kong 64, they kind of borrowed that for like the fungi level, like the fungi forest. It was very similar to that.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say that level was inspired by it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the plot of Banjo Kazooie, and it's like it's just an amazing. It's an amazing little game, and like you have to transform into different animals too. I liked the the snow level, Freeze Easy Peak, because you
Yeah.
have to race that, like, you have to race the wall. Wait, is it a walrus you have to race?
I believe it is a
I
walrus. No,
think
you
it's a.
turn into a walrus.
That's right. No, you race a walrus in Diddy Kong Racing. That's
Yeah.
right. You have to race the polar bear.
Yes, yeah, and
That's
you
what it
turn
is.
into Mumbo turns you into a walrus or a seal or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like you have to collect like these voodoo pieces because like Mumbo Jumbo's a voodoo shaman, and
yeah,
you gotta like jump into and you jump on the thing and like he transforms you.
yeah,
But I love that game.
yeah. It is really it's a great game. It's amazing. I never played Banjo Tooie when I was a kid. I may have played it a couple times as an adult, at like a friend's house or something, but I never played it as a kid. And I want to. I want to go back to it. I just,
I
I
might
just
play it
haven't done
again.
it.
I still have. I think I still have both of them. I know I still have Banjo Kazooie for Nintendo 64.
I definitely have still of Kazooie,
I
and I've
think I
played
still
it
have Tooie, but I'm not
so
sure.
many times over the years. It's such a great game.
Yeah. So Banjo Kazooie. We'll get to the sequels too. And like it's kind of like one like the first sequel was great, and I never played the Game Boy Color ones,
I never either.
and I never played Nuts and Bolts, which is
No.
kind of which I did which we'll get to that, but a lot
It's
of
been
people have just ruled it out as a disaster.
Well, it was universally panned.
Yeah.
JonTron actually did a very good
Oh,
comprehensive episode on the history of because when he did Nuts and Bolts, he did like a whole episode of like the how like the Banjo Kazooie, the history of Banjo Kazooie, and there was actually an episode of Did You Know Gaming on Banjo Kazooie about and when again JonTron narrated it, and it was going into like the whole like history of Banjo Kazooie, what was like going on, like if Banjo there was actually a Banjo 3E in development for the GameCube, and then when after Microsoft purchased Rare, it kind of like got thrown out the window and eventually became Nuts and Bolts, which was unfortunately not a good game.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think if it had not been called Banjo Kazooie, it might have had a chance.
Yeah,
But
I
it
think
didn't.
the fans were really clamoring for a classic Banjo Kazooie game.
Yeah, I
And
have a rule for that, and I forgot what it's called. If I can remember it, like it's one of those things where like if you just named it something, that's what it is. It's the Saint Anger rule. So like Metallica's
yeah.
Saint Anger is not a good album, but if it was a side project and it like wasn't called, it wasn't under the Metallica banner, it probably would have been okay. Kind of like Lulu. Like if I think
Yeah.
if it wasn't under, I think if it wasn't like if it didn't have Metallica's name on it, I think people would have accepted it a little bit better.
Well, yeah, or Risk, make it as a Risk. I
That
think
too.
it was just Dave Mustaine Risk, then it would have been, I think, fine. He probably would have been way better because
Yeah, or if it was just under the MD50 thing, it would have been fine.
yeah.
But the other funny thing about Banjo Kazooie is it almost never happened too, because this was it originally started as a game called Project Dream or just Dream, I believe it was called, or like Dream Pirate Adventures or something like that.
Yeah.
And Banjo, and so like the character for Banjo can like there was no bear. It was like just like a person who kind of looks like Rufio from a Hook, and you were like this little like indigenous kid who was running around like, and he had a dog too. He had a little dog, and he was like running around like you were collecting things. And there was also a dinosaur's foot that would randomly like start stomping, and you'd have to like avoid it. And like I guess you would fight pirates at some point or whatever. You were on this island that looked kind of like Kong Isle, like Jungle Japes, and it was originally planned for the Super Nintendo. And they were gonna use, and they were using the same engine that they had used for Donkey Kong Country, and because that console was on its way out, it was like right before, it was like about a year or two before the N64 would have been released, which kind of took away from what was going to be. And they looked at it and they said, well, there's no point in like coming out with this game because it's going to get shelved it might like it'll probably get shelved and like it's not gonna. There's no point in it's not gonna sell because this console's on its way out. We have to like let's put it on the back burner. We won't do it. We're gonna have to scrap this, and we'll start working on something for the new console. And then eventually they kind of like use certain elements from the band from Project Dream, and they kind of like morphed it into Banjo Kazooie in a weird way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I think it was the same team of developers that were working on
it,
and they kind of like, and then they just said, let's take pieces from that idea, and let's like do that. So like the indigenous kid had like, he had like a vest, and that kind of became the backpack, and like
the
somehow
shorts were the same too.
Yeah, the shorts were the same, and like he wore like feathers, and that eventually became Kazooie. It's a weird. I don't know how they came up with this or how they like turned one into the other, but that's what they did. Yeah, Banjo also wears pants. That is, and he does also play a banjo in the beginning, and they had like that weird little like the theme song is cool too.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I'll put the theme song on. Why not? Let's see if the good people can get a little bit of nostalgia. Banjo and Kazooie are also great. They're also a really good character in Super Smash Ultimate.
Oh my God,
they're pretty OP, but they're not super OP. They're not like Fox was for like the older for like Melee.
Oh yeah, or Cloud is pretty broken too.
Yeah, I haven't played with Sephiroth yet.
I haven't either, and from what I've seen, based on just like the trailer alone, Sephiroth looks pretty broken. So I feel like a little bit Smash Ultimate is kind of pay to win because a lot of the DLC characters are really good.
Yeah. All right, so here's the theme song. Let me just put this up for you.
All right, hold on.
Oh, this is the intro.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Fly gets dead. This is really hard to play on guitar, by the way.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
You have to chicken pick.
Yeah. You can't see me, but I'm dancing. There's Mumbo on the sax.
And then on the xylophone.
He's a very talented shaman. And the violin!
Yeah.
And he does parlor tricks, too.
Yeah. Again, very classic, like, cartoony theme song.
Who's playing the drums?
Gruntilda. It's Gruntilda stomping around, pissed off that they're out there playing music in her front yard.
Sure. Or Crunch, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
What a great game. All right. So that's Banjo Kazooie. It's a great game. And
it is amazing.
You should certainly play it. So at the end, Gruntilda when you beat her, the super mecha death Jinju, which you feed eggs into the beacons. Don't ask how these things happen. So you feed eggs into this thing when you're doing the final blow. You're like trying to like feed eggs into this statue, and like you do it, and all the Jinjus come to life, and they like wreck her, and she gets knocked off the castle, and she's trapped underneath a boulder. So everything is saved for now, and then in Banjo Tooie, it turns out Gruntilda has two sisters. So, of course, she has other sisters, more like a Hocus Pocus thing now. Now we're getting into other witch lore, which I know Hocus Pocus is your bag. I don't think I've ever actually seen it.
It's a funny movie. It's actually on Disney Plus.
I know. I haven't gotten around to it.
It's a good movie. I mean, it's a good movie for, a kid's, witch Halloween movie. I think it was one of the better like Halloween movies from when we were a kid that was like aimed towards kids.
My favorite was Halloween Town as like the Halloween kids movie.
Oh yeah,
actually,
I actually never seen a Halloween Town. So there you
Halloween Town is awesome. Our good friends, which we will give a shout out to, Chuck and Ashley Mecaluso and little Gianna at home. They actually live in St. Helens, Oregon. Chuck's a good friend from back in the day in New Jersey, and his parents know Bobby Blitz from Overkill because he would go into the deli they worked at and buy things from them, and they would just talk metal, which is cool. But they live in St. Helens, where Halloween Town was shot, actually, and
That's pretty awesome.
all of the townspeople were extras in the little square in the beginning where they filmed, and they filmed the theater is a real theater. None of that was a set. That was the little town. And Ashley's uncle was she was the werewolf in the opening intro getting a haircut in the barber shop.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, really cool.
Wasn't that town also where they filmed like The Fog or something too, or some like Stephen King movie was in that same town, or there was some other town in Oregon that's been used for several different things.
No, maybe you mean by the water where the Goonies was filmed.
Oh yeah,
because I've passed by that house. Like it's over by the shore. It's on the lower side of I forget exactly where in Oregon it is. I think it's like maybe like a town over. It might even still be in St. Helens. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I haven't been there in a long time.
That was where the Goonies was filmed. Actually.
Yeah. But they filmed a bunch of the '80s movies in there, and I think the Stephen King movie you're thinking of might be Pet Sematary.
Maybe
I think they might have filmed that there. But what else? They filmed a ton of things over in of '80s movies over in that little area. But
yeah,
the lady who owns the Goonies house, I guess she didn't know what she bought when she bought it, but she hates living there because people are constantly coming up to the Goonies house to take pictures of it or take pictures with the house, or some people are trying to go in. I mean, I don't know, she had to have known, I don't know how she could have not known when she bought it, or maybe she always lived there and she rented the house, and she bought the house years before they did it, and then Hollywood started asking her to use it, and she said okay, and not knowing that these were going to be major blockbuster cult classics, and then people would start knocking on her door at all hours of the night.
Well, I feel there's signs. Any house that's a pop culture house, quote unquote, that they would use for to shoot a movie or a show becomes that a landmark. I feel like the people have to know what they're going to get into because it's well known. Look at the Sopranos house. The Sopranos house, people are driving up to all the time. You know?
We did.
Yeah, exactly. We did. So.
Yeah, that was fun actually. I had a job interview that day, so I took a picture in a suit in front of the house like a schmuck. But yeah, she had to have known, or but there's signs in front of the house, and there's a bunch of picket signs and things, and she was it's don't come here, don't ask to take a picture, no, and it's I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sign that's no, we're not the Goonies house.
Yeah.
But yeah, she doesn't like that. She doesn't like where she lives, and she doesn't want to sell it. But I'm sure the property value has been great because people know that house.
Yeah, exactly. There's
I don't know.
Well, maybe that has killed the property value.
That could be too.
No one wants to buy it to live there because then they have to deal with the same crap that she does.
I'm sure some loving Goonies fan would buy it and
maybe
take care of it.
Turn it to a Goonies museum.
Probably. I mean, that'd be really the only. That'd be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Is if somebody does it, and I'm sure that there's a collector of that because there's a collector for everything.
Of course there is.
So anyway, we get to Banjo Tooie, and Gruntilda and her other and her Hocus Pocus sisters show up, and they free her from the boulder. But Gruntilda's like rotted away, and she's a skeleton. Somehow she's not dead.
Well, she's a witch, so she's probably
she's a witch. I guess
probably
she
like a
has,
necromancer, and she became a lich.
Oh yeah, that could be. And she's like the Lich Queen.
Yeah,
I don't know. She's the Lich Lady, not to be confused with the Lunch Lady.
Oh God,
who could also be a lich.
That's true.
But she doesn't float in water, but then therefore a witch. Now reduced to a skeleton, I'm reading from the Wikipedia. Gruntilda plans to drain the life energy from the entirety of the game's hub's world, the ILO Hags, Irish town, to restore herself to normal, leaving Banjo and Kazooie to stop her plans. I thought she took Tootie again. Doesn't she take?
I don't know. I didn't play Banjo Tooie, so I don't remember.
I thought she takes the sister Tootie again. I don't think that she tries to sap the energy from the hub world. I could be wrong, but I thought it's the same song and dance. She steals Tootie again.
Well, I mean, the point of her stealing Tootie in the first one was because she wanted to
beauty.
steal Tootie. It was like an Elizabeth Bathory thing going on there. I mean,
yeah.
Like bathe in the blood of Tootie to
God.
become young.
Well, I mean, the game's rated E, so they could only do so much.
Well, if you get the game over screen, you see what happens. Like, they put her in some kind of weird, like, transfer, like, machine.
Yeah,
and,
they do.
Like, Tootie becomes, like, an ugly, fucking giant, like, gorilla-like monster. And like, Gruntilda comes out, like, hot.
Oh, and, yeah, and then Mumbo Jumbo tries to woo her.
Like, horny for her. Like, yeah.
Let me see if they have... They gotta have the game over screen.
The game over screen, just look.
Yeah, here we go. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love the comment. It's like, oh, God, Gruntilda is smoking. Good on you, in Booney Yukuso? I don't know this person's name. Okay, here we go. Oh, now you can hear, like, how they sound. Oh, Klungo! That was his name!
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here we go, bouncing up and down like the fly. Uh-oh.
Like, it even, like, changed her dress into, like, a mini dress. Like,
yeah, and it's, like, all leathery looking.
And she talks like she's having constant orgasms.
Yeah. Oh, God, here comes Mumbo! Like Kramer. Oh, my God. Come back to Mumbo's skull.
Yeah.
They're, like, not even trying to hide it. Like, he just wants to get it on.
Yeah.
Oh, God, and here's poor Tootie.
And she's mad at Banjo, but you only get the game over screen if Banjo's dead, so, like,
yeah,
you know,
she can't do anything.
Right.
Alright. So in Banjo Tooie, things tend to happen again. According to Wikipedia, Gruntilda plans to trade in life energy, yada yada yada, Irish town, I don't know, try the veal. Saving the day once again, the Baron Bird caused the destruction of most of Gruntilda's skeletal body, leaving only her skull, which that does happen at the end.
Because I know I've seen clips of Nuts and Bolts, and Grunty in that is just the head.
Yeah, she becomes just the head.
And they, like, put her in, like a
robot space.
Yeah,
thing.
like almost like a Futurama kind of, like, just head in the jar kind of thing or something.
Yeah, she kind of looks like the robot from it's kind of like if you put, like, if you kind of put a jar with a head in it on top of the robot from Lost in Space. That's kind of what she looks like.
Yeah.
Except she doesn't say danger, Will Robinson. But Banjo Tooie, the boss battles, I think, were a lot more, they were a lot tougher. Banjo Kazooie, the boss battles were okay. Banjo Tooie apparently like the game is controversial for being significantly harder than the first game, which is some of it. Like some of it is, but I wouldn't say all of it. I would say the final boss fight in Banjo Kazooie is much harder than the final boss fight in Banjo Tooie.
I think the sequel is always usually a little harder than the original game.
I mean, it probably
You
should
know?
be. I think that should be like a good rule of thumb. Not
Yeah,
obnoxiously
I think
harder,
I
but
think
like it should be harder.
Ripto's Rage is harder than the first Spyro the Dragon game.
You know,
Definitely.
I never played Ripto's Rage. I think I played I
That's a
played
great.
I
It's my
think I
favorite
played a
one.
little bit of the first one. I played the third one.
Yeah, Ripto's Rage is my favorite one. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all great. They're all the Spyro trilogy was amazing, but Ripto's Rage is definitely probably the best one.
Yeah, and I think Crash Bandicoot 2 is harder than Crash Bandicoot 1.
No, that's an exception.
know.
2 is a little bit easier.
I don't
One-
know because I've been playing
Crash
it.
1 is hard.
Yeah, well, I've been playing it on like on the Switch, and like there's a problem with like the way that they redesigned it, where like he slips on things.
Yeah.
So like they did something
collision
wrong.
is the collision is too precise in the remake, so it's like the bad graphics of the original like somehow made it easier because like you could like you would you didn't land square on a platform, it was okay. Like you had like a little bit of like overreach where if like only like the heel of your foot was on it, you still lived. But in the remake, because the graphics are like much better, so I guess the angles are sharper and stuff, and like you'll fall over the stupidest thing.
I think it's because in the original for the collision he was designed as a to have like cube feet.
Yeah.
Where like in the remake, his feet are like on the collision detection, he's more of like a what do you call it feature? It's more like a cone.
Yeah.
So like it's more rounded. So like you have to be on.
There's less surface area.
Yeah, you have to be on point and like be right on the button every single time. Otherwise, even if you're like there, if you're off by a hair, he just slips and dies. So I've rage quit that too many times where like I'm no longer playing that game.
Yeah. I think that's one thing they did good with. I mean, the Spyro, it's a little bit of that because obviously, better graphics means better collision, and well, a better gameplay in general means better collision because collision has come so far, since the 90s, The 90s, It was just like a bunch of big giant blocks around your character, so the collision was gigantic, You look at like the old school Counter-Strike game, how the collision was versus like CS:GO, and like the difference is like it's like huge. Like so, same thing with the newer games with the remakes. But Banjo Kazooie, I think had great really good game feel. Like the collision was really good.
The controls are tighter in that game.
They were definitely really tight.
I remember the camera was it was a little off on the first one sometimes, but in the second one, I think they fixed the camera up a bit.
Yeah, and that was still a time where camera physics were still a hard thing. There was no standard. Everyone was still experimenting with camera physics.
Yeah,
some games were new.
Yeah, some
then.
Were great and some were terrible, and you kind of just got what you got, and we did, and we liked it.
Yeah, that's what we dealt with. There were some games that had, you look at a game like Bubsy 3D, those camera physics are the worst, which is crazy to me that came out because that came out right before Super Mario 64. But Super Mario 64 came out a month after that, so they were both in development at the same time, and it's like a world apart of camera physics. But again, Banjo Kazooie, Tooie, great camera physics for the most part, especially for the time period when again it was the Wild West for camera control basically.
For sure, and I think I like Banjo Kazooie better than Tooie for a variety of reasons. But I will say that Banjo Tooie is it's they definitely refined a lot of the controls and the graphics and the engine for Banjo Kazooie. So as a game, by itself, Banjo Tooie, I think, is superior.
Yeah.
In playability, but I think Banjo Kazooie just overall is just the better game because there's just more that I enjoyed from it. I just overall just like Banjo Kazooie better. I don't know if it's the music that's just better. Oh, that it just resonates better for me for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, and Bottles dies in Banjo Tooie. Spoiler. Yeah, she like lightning strikes him, or she like blows him up like in the very beginning. He like dies immediately. And he's like a ghost, and then like the guy his like ghost is just there, and you can like talk to his like soul. He has like again cartoony, and he has like angel wings, and he's playing like a little harp.
I mean, rare games are like, I mean, look at Donkey Kong 64. I'm pretty sure the grandma from Donkey Kong Country.
Oh yeah, she's a ghost. Yeah, she's a ghost.
So they kind of they deal with death in a like a very like, you know, okay for kids way. Like, you know, like people just become a cartoony ghost. So it's not like they're like, you know, it's an interesting way to do it.
Well, I mean, they just Casperize them. If you Casperize them, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're not scary ghosts. They're still, like, friendly, and they're just talking to you, and they're just a ghost, so...
Yeah, and every once in a while, you get Jasper, a douchebag ghost. Have you ever seen that, the Robot Chicken thing? With Jasper the douchebag ghost?
I think so, yeah.
Alright. It's a hoot.
Robot Chicken's a classic. That's another Why Does This Exist, but a good Why Does This Exist?
Yeah, like, just that whole Stupid Buddy Studios. Just, like everything they do is pretty funny, and like actually they came out with something last year called Crossing Swords that's hilarious.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's on Hulu. It's so funny. Oh, really? It's so funny. Yeah. So we have Banjo Tooie here, Banjo Kazooie, and we also get another animal changer shaman person in Banjo Tooie called Humba Wumba.
Mm-hmm.
She's like a Pocahontas kind of girl, and like Mumbo's kind of like got a thing for her because Mumbo is, you know, Mr. Ladies Man. Mumbo's a player, man.
Mumbo is a player. I mean, he friggin' just abandons, like, you know, Banjo and Tootie to like go out with Gruntilda when she's hot. So
yeah.
So he's really kind of a douche because he doesn't pursue Gruntilda until she's hot, you know.
Well, of course it was the '90s. He's a stereotypical douchebag '90s guy.
He's the George Costanza of Banjo Kazooie, because like, you know how George Costanza's like going out with that chick who needs a nose job, and then when she gets a botched nose job, he breaks up with her, and then like she gets it fixed and she's hot and she goes out with Kramer instead.
Yeah,
like it's a perfect example.
Yeah. That's Mumbo. He's a ladies' man.
Yeah.
Voodoo ladies' man.
Oh, and then so Banjo Tooie.
Dr. Love, yeah.
And then there was supposed to be a Banjo 3. It was in development. It was planned to come out. I mean, they had teased it for pretty much immediately after Banjo Tooie came out. They were teasing it.
They teased it, and they teased it at the end of the boss fight as like a joke. Like when you beat Gruntilda for the second time, she goes, "I can't believe you did this again. I'll get you in Banjo 3."
Right. And like, so it was in development for the GameCube. They had released like, you know, images and all this stuff, and were teasing it. And then Rare got sold.
If you got the ice,
Microsoft.
the ice. I think was the ice key in the first one or the second one. Because if you had, there was some like thing where like you use the Rumble Pack or something, and if you beat the game, if you beat Banjo Tooie 100%, that and I think if you've also had beaten Banjo Kazooie, I'm not sure if you had beaten that 100% or not, but you would unlock like screenshots for the sequel, or maybe that was for Banjo Kazooie for Banjo Tooie. I think it was for Banjo. Never mind. I think it was for that. No, I'm sorry. If you get the ice key thing in Banjo Tooie, then you can unlock. Then like you get the dragon transformation with Kazooie, where the final boss fight is so much easier because she breathes fire and stuff, which is pretty badass.
Yeah.
That's so. Anyway, Banjo 3E.
So it's planned to come out. Microsoft buys Rare, and basically anything that was being worked on for Nintendo games ceased because now Microsoft had their own console. The Xbox was coming out, and they wanted Rare to make games exclusively for them. So Rare made a couple of games, Grabbed by the Ghoulies. There was what was it? Cameo Elements of Power. It was a 360 release title.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
It was an interesting game because they were trying to showcase the 360's like ability to like have a lot of stuff on screen at once. So basically, in like the hub world of that, there was like this thing where you could like literally plow through an army of like bad guys, and like it was like literally like 100 of them on the screen at once.
Huh.
So they do that, and then they start teasing that they're going to keep making this Banjo Kazooie sequel. And everyone's like, oh, maybe it's going to be Banjo 3. It's going to be awesome. Oh, they also made Conquer Live and Reloaded for Xbox. I forgot about that, too.
Yeah, that's like just a remake. It's like just a remaster of Conker's Bad Fur Day. And I think they censor it, too.
Yeah, I think so. So they they finally released Nuts and Bolts, and it was like the first problem with it is that I haven't played it myself, but I've seen like the video, I've seen the intro to it. They basically take the whole they shit on the whole concept of the original Banjo Kazooie.
I've never played it. I think I played the demo, and that's it. And I was confused by the demo.
First, they teased Banjo 3 as like, you see, like they did this like trailer where he's running to go collect something, and he like kind of hits like, and it's like a fake backdrop, and it drops down, and then like you see this huge vast world. So everyone's like, "Holy crap! It's gonna be like this huge like thing where you're collecting all these items, and it's a giant open world instead of just like separate levels." So everyone was all excited. Then Banjo Nuts and Bolts come out, and the first thing they do is shit on the collection aspect of the first two games. They're like basically the Lord of Games is like this weird robot dude who's like making you do all this bullshit, is like, oh, here, go collect all these like friggin' notes, and it's like literally just like a straight line of shit you have to collect. And he's like, oh, isn't this boring? This is just a collectathon. It's like basically like just making fun of the fact that like you collected items in the original game. And then like also Banjo and Kazooie are both fat. Like, they haven't done anything since Banjo Tooie, apparently, so they're, like, literally just fat, and, like, Banjo has, like, trouble walking because he's so fat he's gonna, like, drop on the floor from, like, lack of exercise. And then, like, it was, like, a car game. Like, you built cars. And I guess the concept of having the cars was because, like, the levels were supposed to be big, so you needed something to get around, which is fine. But, like, they took out everything that was good about the first two, and it was just a boring empty open world where you just drive around and do like these missions for like random friggin' people all around.
Yeah, that's kind of lame. It just turned into like Banjo Kazooie, the Fast and the Furious.
They basically were making it into what was popular at the time, which was like these open world games where you were just doing side quests for like people, almost like a Grand Theft Auto kind of thing.
Yeah, and
like
just
that.
Racing games or car games too.
Right.
No, I actually forgot about this with Banjo Tooie. So like when she like seeks revenge, she like destroys Banjo's house, and like Banjo, Kazooie, Mumbo Jumbo, and Bottles are all playing poker, and then like Bottles gets like caught in the crossfire and dies.
Oh my god!
And she turns
dies from his injuries the next morning, so he went throughout the whole night.
Yeah,
suffering. Jesus, that's dark.
And then at the end, like Klungo like turns on you. Her sisters' names are Mingella and Blabelda. Yeah. What a minge. Mingy. Gross. So gross. And then like at the end they're all like on top of her lair, and they're playing hacky sack with the head, and that's where she says the line, "I'll get you in Banjo 3." But like,
right,
they're kind of assholes too.
Well, I mean, I think it's justified that she killed their best friend, the
Yeah.
friggin' bottles. Like, I think friggin' playing hacky sack with her dismembered head is like the least bad thing they could do to
Ah,
her, you know?
yeah, that's true, especially with Mumbo around.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the first Banjo Kazooie game released on a non Nintendo system, and it shows. Just
Yeah.
it was just not want. It was just not the game that anybody wanted to make, and
No.
there were also some. There was also the handheld game Grunty's Revenge, which that one I never played.
I never played it either.
I don't know. Here, let me see the synopsis of this thing. Taking place 2 months after Banjo Kazooie, Klungo, Gruntilda's most loyal henchman, makes a robot for Gruntilda's spirit to dwell inside. The newly created Mecha Grunty. Okay, this. Oh, so that's where we get the Grunty robot in Nuts and Bolts, because this one actually
Yeah.
came out in 2003, Grunty's Revenge, and then Nuts and Bolts was 2008. So
Yeah.
okay, so that makes sense. The newly created Mecha Grunty, infused with the transferred Gruntilda spirit, travels back in time to present the first meeting of Banjo to prevent the first meeting of Banjo and Kazooie. Oh, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
Banjo and Kazooie, with assistance from their shaman friend Mumbo Jumbo, at it again, stops her plans and sends her back to beneath the boulder in Spiral Mountain. Gruntilda commands Klungo to contact her sisters, setting the events of Banjo Tooie in motion. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's an interesting little link between the two games there.
Yeah, I like that. It would have been nice if they did that in a real console. And then there was something else called Banjo Pilot, where it's not really part of the series at all. It's like just a plane racing game of some kind.
So that's interesting because Diddy Kong Racing also had
Oh,
planes.
that's what was planned. The game was
Yeah.
originally planned as a sequel to Diddy Kong Racing, titled Diddy Kong Pilot, but was retooled to feature Banjo Kazooie characters following the purchase of Rare by Microsoft. Okay, so that might be the game that was featured in the demo for the GameCube, but then after all this happened, they couldn't do it.
No, well, they
Maybe.
were actually planning on making Banjo
Well,
3.
oh
So
no,
this, I think, was a
no, because
separate
this was
thing.
also Game Boy Advance. No, you're right,
Yeah.
because this was a separate thing. No, I wasn't talking about Banjo 3. I was talking about the Diddy Kong Racing sequel. But
Oh,
no,
yeah.
this is probably its own separate thing anyway, and that's probably something that I think they. I don't know if they did anything. I don't know if they ever did like a Did You Know Gaming about that.
I don't
They,
know.
I
think
don't
so.
know. But
The what you call the purchase of Rare by Microsoft, which was an interesting situation legally because Rare had been making the Donkey Kong games up to that point, and Donkey Kong was a Nintendo IP. Like that was, Donkey Kong
Yeah.
was the original Nintendo arcade game, and like that was the origin of Mario. So like when they had Diddy Kong Racing that had Banjo and Conker in it, but then they couldn't make another game like that because Microsoft they couldn't make a sequel to Diddy Kong Racing because their characters that were in Diddy Kong Racing were now that were now owned by Microsoft. So it's interesting because a lot of the original Rare games that the classic Rare like Jet Force Gemini, Perfect Dark, Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie have now been re-released as the Rare Rewind on Xbox. So it's interesting that how things turned out legally because these are games that were on the the Nintendo 64 and are now on Xbox. But then the Donkey Kong Country games they couldn't include obviously because it's Nintendo IPs. And now we've come full circle because Banjo Kazooie are now back into Smash Brothers. So it's we're back. Everything has kind of come full circle in terms of copyright, I guess.
yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah.
Oh, there was also something called the Stop and Swap in the first one, where you were from Banjo Kazooie, where you were supposed to get special content from Banjo Tooie, but they never really did it. Apparently, due to Nintendo 64 revisions.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was
So it just never happened. You couldn't get the ice key, you couldn't get 6 different eggs to get all the things. but like there's the only way to do it is like you have to like you got to try to hack it somehow. But
Yeah,
sometimes
it's probably in the code, in the source code still.
yeah, or like if you use like a Game Shark thing and you could do it,
Yeah.
but like sometimes sometimes you could do it and sometimes you like it would just erase all of your files. So like you like when you did it, you like really risked like losing it all.
Yeah, I
So
think the people that were doing it and like data mining and stuff like that are usually people that are like not trying to like worry about their files getting erased. They just want to see what's in the code that was cut and stuff like that.
yeah.
So that's why I don't think people care about it as much.
No, well, I mean, also they eventually got to play the sequel, so at this
Well,
point
yeah,
it didn't even matter.
yeah,
But yeah, so and then Banjo. So after all of this like rare stuff, the folks from the folks who were on Rare, the Stampers and all those guys, they like it just wasn't even the same,
no,
and they quit basically. Like
yeah,
they abruptly quit. And I mean, even if you like look at the if you look at the like just the cover from from Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, the art is like so drastically different
hmm
that like they're all like
yeah.
square.
Banjo doesn't look right. It doesn't look like Banjo from the original. Like it looks too realistic a
He
little bit.
it just looks like Elvis on like it just looks like it just looks like Elvis on like a crack bender.
Yeah, Kazooie does not look right either.
Also looks like she's been on a crack bender
Yeah.
or meth. He's a mechanic. He's working on cars. You got to stay up late.
It's like they were trying to make it. They were trying to appeal to like a more adult, like I don't want to say adult, but like an older audience, like a teenage
Well,
audience
because
with
they were
it. And it's like,
yeah.
people that were teenagers when this game came out were like
That's who wanted
we're
to
not
buy
even
the
bored,
game.
or we're too young to play the original. So it's like, why are you appealing to teenagers? Appeal to the people that were like young adults when this came out. Like we were November 2008. We were like the generation that grew up playing Banjo Kazooie was like
Right. Because
18,
you and I
19.
were, well, you and I were 8 playing
Yeah,
Banjo Kazooie.
yeah.
So, I mean, if that doesn't give away our age, I don't know what does. But they just misfired, and I think it was just because Microsoft probably had too much control over it, and they didn't know what they really had. And like,
Right.
it's like the thing to do would have just been, hey, we should do a sequel to let's do a sequel to this thing, or maybe they were bothering them to do it, and they were like, all right, just do it. We'll leave you alone. Make this game, and we'll put it out instead of like it was probably micromanaged to such a degree that like they couldn't do what they would have liked to do.
No, and this was also a time in gaming where like gaming was becoming more and more popular, and all these companies wanted to get rich instead of like make games as art, which I think was what we grew up playing before gaming was like super mainstream and popular. It was like the games were art. It was like they were better because people were pouring their heart and soul into it and making a good game, and they weren't thinking about, oh, I want to make a quick buck. It's like, I want to make a game that's good to play and fun to play.
Right.
And right at this time is when that started to change. Call of Duty was like very popular. Like, so, everyone wanted to make like a popular game that was going to sell a lot of money or sell a lot of units and make a lot of money.
Yeah, if it wasn't a sports game, it was a first-person shooter.
What?
Like that was kind of the market at the time. It
Right.
was like,
yeah, exactly.
Because also Halo was like the big. It was also like huge too. Like if it wasn't like anything that like if you weren't a first-person shooter and you weren't a sports game, you were Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, essentially. There was a few RPGs here and there, like Elder Scrolls Oblivion came out in 2005, I think. But like again, it was like the biggest games were Madden and Call of Duty, Halo. Grand Theft Auto, I think was the one exception where there was like kind of a game that was like just like an open world, third person kind of game. It's so and that's what they were really trying to do here is trying to make, I guess, something similar to a Grand Theft Auto where like you drive cars around and
And do missions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
And
only
there was a lot of games that took that formula too, like The Simpsons Hit and Run.
I was actually gonna say that was probably the one that did it the best.
Yeah.
But it was also The Simpsons, so you knew what you were getting with that.
Exactly.
Where this was like Banjo Kazooie nuts and bolts. All right, well, okay, what is this?
And it could have been good. Like they could have done the building aspect of it and the car aspect, and still kept it, close to what the original Banjo Kazooie was. Like a platformer, an action platformer adventure game. And it would have worked. Like they could have just made the levels bigger so that you have to drive to separate parts of the level to get what you need to get. But then also had the platforming. Like you drive from this mountain over here where there's a castle on top that you have to climb up to, down to over here where it's this ocean part where you have to go under the water and explore a cave or something,
Right. And if you really wanted to really put the cars in a more of a focal point, just add a couple of races here and there, but
right.
don't make it don't make it the heaviest feature of the game. There's a good there's a good balance where people will appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a point in Nuts and Bolts where you build a plane and you have to crash through a thing that looks like Mario, which they heavily featured in the trailer. Yeah. Yeah, there was it was some kind of a thing where you're flying through this block statue or something, and it bears a resemblance to Mario.
So this is one of those situations where the people that were the people that were making it wanted to make it good, but then the people that were really in control, the powers that be, wanted it their way.
It kind of just seemed like the powers that be just wanted to just give Nintendo the middle finger with this game,
which is a stupid thing because the original Banjo Kazooie was on a Nintendo console. The fans that were going to be playing it were going to be fans of Nintendo, or at least Nintendo 64. Like a game like this, who are they? They're not expecting new players to play it. That I don't think. I think this should have been geared towards people looking for a Banjo Tooie sequel.
Well, it should have been, but if Microsoft actually had cared about this project, then it probably would have been a great game and we'd be having a different conversation. But
that's true.
I don't know. I've never worked for Microsoft. I don't think that I will, and I don't think that I'll ever work with anybody that had anything to do with this game. So, but in interviews that some of the developers have come out and spoken out about this. Mm-hmm. This made them quit Rare essentially.
Yes. Yeah, basically the entire original staff that worked on all those classic games were gone after this.
Yeah, they just said screw this.
They eventually
this is not what I wanted.
They eventually got back together and made a new company and made
Ukulele. Platonic Games, and the art came back around full circle with the indie developers, which we saw on these last next gen consoles and the current ones.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's we saw that I think the biggest success story of the indie games is Cuphead.
Oh yeah,
that
definitely.
was just beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
Which we can talk about that in another episode as well because they're getting their own animated series and that should be coming out soon actually.
Yeah. Which it warrants it. I mean, clearly is done in the style of the classic, 1930s, 40s cartoons.
Max Fleischer.
Yeah.
And, it's got the loose style and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
And they're constantly dancing and moving. And, yeah.
Yeah, just so much time. And those dudes, they worked on that for 10 years and they had construction jobs and they when they came home, they just worked on the game. And it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And then they did their and I believe they did a Kickstarter and that's how everything was done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just goes to show that the difference between having passion for making a game, with the difference between the developers that have passion and the developers that just want to make money.
Yeah.
The developers that have passion that that want to make a game that's good that they would like to play usually make a good game. And that's the perfect example with Ukulele too, is that they came back together and they made they were like, you know what, we want to make a classic platform game in the style of Banjo Kazooie, basically a spiritual successor to Banjo Kazooie, much like how Perfect Dark was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye. You know,
Right.
like it could be a sequel, but it isn't because they
Yeah.
don't have the rights to it, right?
Well, it was
And
like a
that's
it was a Blues Brothers situation. It was like it was like years later. Jake gets out of prison and he's like, "We're getting the band back together."
yeah,
We're like
exactly.
like these guys formed Platonic because they were on a mission from God, and they came out with Ukulele.
Yep. And I mean, it's a great game. I don't know if you've played ukulele, but
I haven't beaten it because it's
it's
the only issue that I have with Ukulele is that it's too small, and I think they could have. I think if there would have just been like one or two more levels, I think it would have been. I think it would have been perfect. But because it gets very repetitive going in the same world, and you expand the worlds,
yeah,
and like the size of the world does double essentially. But
yeah.
sometimes it's just like, well, I didn't really want more of this world. I would have liked a new
Yeah.
world.
It was an
But
interesting
it was a
concept,
good
the way you
game.
could, like,
It's a
unlock
very
new
good
parts of the
game.
level. Yeah, yeah. It's I love it. I think it's, you know, again, the closest thing to Banjo 3 we're ever gonna get because,
Yeah.
you know, it was the same the same developers. It was the same, you know,
They got the
style
same.
of game.
They even got the same composer, Grant Kirkhope.
Yep.
And like as like a stretch goal, I don't know if you did this, but as a stretch goal, like they sent it to you in like a cartridge in like a Nintendo 64, like wrapping.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I just got the digital when I back. I was a backer on Kickstarter, but I just opted for the digital, which was the least expensive one.
And that actually spawned a sequel in itself, Ukulele and the Impossible Lair. That one I have not played. That's
I
more
haven't
of
played it either yet.
that's more of a 2D scroller.
Yeah, it's like a 2.5D.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is good, but like the crazy thing is, so like Ukulele, it's also, you know, a weird like buddy comedy.
Yeah.
Yuka is the banjo of the group. He is he's a chameleon, and
Yeah.
Laylee is a bat, which is the kazooie, and Laylee also is wisecracking as well, and you know Yuka's like very like mellow and relaxed. So that's kind of like the difference there, but like it's an allegory against Microsoft and big business, and like honestly, like even the boss, Capital B, has like a slight resemblance to Bill Gates,
Yeah.
which I think is hilarious. Like, all right, let's look in this. Let
And
me look at
it's
this
the
ugly
the
mug.
Hivory Towers Corporation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just funny, and he's just this like ruthless, degenerate businessman, and like there he is. Look at that guy.
Yeah.
And he's got like bad teeth. I don't know. He does have like he does have like a weird little resemblance to Bill Gates, and I just think that's hilarious. He's got like quite a schnoz on him.
Yeah.
With his little honeycomb scepter. Like so he's like a big jerk, and there's like this giant evil corporation that's like trying to like so like instead of so like in Banjo Kazooie you collect music notes and you collect puzzle pieces called jiggies. Because like the whole world is like a puzzle, you have to solve the puzzles and put them together to unlock the world and everything like that. But in Ukulele, they live in like they live in more of like a storybook kind of world, and they're in like the lifeblood of their world is the pages. In like these, you know, because each level is a story and each level is a storybook, and the more pages you get, you can add pages to the world, and that's how it expands, and that's a cool concept in itself.
Yeah.
And you can also get pages to like open the book and everything, and that's how you get that too. And you collect the coins, and you collect a bunch of other things as well, similar to Banjo Kazooie.
Yeah.
But it's still its own game too. Like it's not like it's trying to remind you, hey, this would have been Banjo 3E. It's its own thing, and it's like it still makes you like appreciate it. So
Right.
like so like Capital B steals all the pages, and you have to go get the pages
Hmm.
and like save the pages and like get the golden books to like do everything because like the pages are like the lifeblood and the currency and everything like that.
Yeah, and uh, I like how in so like ukulele has kind of took whatever like they did in banjo and
Oh, because they take
expanded
the
on it.
magical book. That's what it is. He takes the magical book,
Right.
and you got to get the pages for that. So it's like the one book to rule them all,
Hmm.
and they got to like stop him from like doing bad stuff with it.
Um, I think the best thing about it is that so they took everything that was good about banjo and expanded on it, like the abilities that you have. Like there's so many different abilities that you get in ukulele. Like like makes banjo look like like wow, you only have to do like five different things in banjo, and in ukulele it's like 20 different abilities or something you get. It's like
Yeah, you do get more moves.
it's cool the way they did that. How like there's all and obviously they, when you get an ability, it's obviously that you have to like use it at like the certain point that you get it at. Like, almost like how in Zelda you get an item in a dungeon and like you use that item throughout the dungeon primarily
Hmm.
to solve puzzles. They kind of did that with ukulele, but you also have a lot of stuff where you have to go back to like previous parts of the level and like
Yeah, there is a lot of
okay,
backtracking.
now I have this new ability. Let me go back to this level or this part of the level and unlock something that I couldn't get to before.
Right. And they also like in place of the Jinjos, they have a doctor that like turns you into the stuff too, like Doctor
Mhm.
Puz, which is like an octopus scientist, and you got to get like molecules, which is obviously playing molecules. Um, but like in place of the Jinjos, you have to you have to find ghost riders, and you have to, but like you have to like instead of just like going to the right spot and finding them, you have to do certain things to like get the ghost riders to like show up really.
Mhm.
Like you'll hear them making their noises, but like you gotta
Yeah,
like you have to do something to like get them to appear because they're ghosts, which I
yeah,
think is kind of cool too.
yeah. It's an interesting concept. It makes it a little bit more fun to just like you're not just going around collecting something. Like the Jinjos, you basically just found them and collected them.
Yeah,
There was a little bit of a challenge to get them in this.
like a lot of things, they have a point to them. Like there's a purpose for why they have to do what they do, and like there was a lot of thought that was in there. But like this was like it was a Kickstarter campaign, and I forget how quick they got their goal
It
very
was
quickly.
very quickly. There was definitely a demand for this type of game.
Yeah,
Especially, I think when this came out in like the mid 2010s, the nostalgia craze was in full swing. Everyone, you look at the other Kickstarters that are going at the same time. You had Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which was
yeah,
made by the original director of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and they brought in like the original team for that, the artists, they had the composer who did the music for Symphony of the Night come and do the music for Bloodstained. So it was very much the right time for it, for like these old like these teams that made these classic games of the 90s that our generation grew up playing. It was and they were coming back to make a new game in that same vein. And so the Kickstarter like really blew up, I think, for this, and it was kind of the first, I think, in this like line of games that like did that, where it was like these nostalgic games made by these older creators. Well, I think it was the first really successful one.
yeah. It
Um,
got mixed to average reviews, which but like I personally think that it's a great game.
I do too.
But like so
The,
here we
criti-
go.
the criticisms are fair. There was
Yeah, I will
some
say that.
legitimate criticisms, and it wasn't like the greatest game ever. It wasn't. I would certainly say that Banjo Kazooie is a better game than Ukulele, but
I
it's
would
still
too.
like it's still a great game. Like, and especially for now when you have the friggin' most of the crap that you have out now, it's pretty. It's a diamond in the rough, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, so here's the info on it. So like this game was apparently the fastest one, it was apparently the fastest video game in Kickstarter history to reach $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
The funding was announced in May. It reached its initial goal of 175,000 British pounds within, because they're a British company, within 38 minutes, which is crazy. And its highest goal was 1 million. They did that in 21 hours.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was the fastest video game in Kickstarter history to reach 1 million. I don't know if that's been beaten. Probably has.
It might have
But
been now.
I don't know how quickly it was. But that's just crazy. And I think over the time they ended up, it says here, it is currently the highest funded UK video game in Kickstarter history, passing the previous record held by Elite Dangerous, earning GBP $2,090,000, $2,090,000 and $104.
Yeah.
2,090,104, whatever. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it was certainly a lot of money. And again, it was the time for it. People were really clamoring for those kind of old school games, especially our generation. I think the nostalgia craze really hits our generation a lot because I think we just want, the 90s were a pretty good time to grow up. It was relatively peaceful in the world. The economy was good. There was a lot of good video games out.
Mm-hmm.
Our generation was really like kind of stuck in between the two generations where we still kind of played outside a lot, but we also played video games and had technology. So I think that's why the nostalgia craze really hits us a lot is, it's like we had a pretty good childhood, if you're a 90s kid. So I think that's why, games like Yooka-Laylee and Bloodstained Ritual of the Night really did so great on the Kickstarter.
Is Bloodstained good? I've actually never played that one.
Very good. Yeah,
okay, because I loved Castlevania.
Yeah, it's basically it's similar to Castlevania. It's a Metroidvania game where
Right.
you're going around and you have to collect different items, but there's all these little different layers that you didn't have in Castlevania. There's just more you collect monster souls too. That allows you to do all these different abilities, and it's fun.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you have it, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this whole time. I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And we appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for sticking around and letting us just, shoot the breeze on this crazy GameStop stuff. And then talking about Banjo Tooie and Banjo Kazooie. And Banjo 3E that never was, Yooka-Laylee, and just all kinds of video game stuff. Thank you so much. And I hope that we tickled your fancy today. Not all of your fancies, but your nostalgia fancy. Unless that is in some way inappropriate, then then you know what? Live your life.
Now we're canceled. We're gonna get canceled.
Yeah, that's great. that's great. So once again, we have been Why Does This Exist? You can find us on patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. Over there you can see some watch-alongs of Hi Oh Honey I'm Home and other things that we will get to as this show evolves. This is only our second episode.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point we might be able to do Let's Plays. Right now is not really the time that we can do, and we haven't really figured that out, and we haven't really decided on whether or not we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But if you keep supporting us on Patreon, then that'll give us a reason to start.
Yeah.
But we'll have some watch-alongs of some shows, some crazy weird wrestling matches, and some odd things. We'll even have some listening parties to weird albums and weird things. If you want to tell us about something weird that you think we should talk about, doesn't have to be a game show, a game or anything, or a movie or anything like that. It can be anything that you want within reason that you would like us to talk about. You can email us at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com, or you can just leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Why Does This Exist? Just look for our stuff, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what else you'd like us to talk about, and maybe we can work that into an episode somehow, or we can give us its own episode.
Yeah.
our froggy fellow, our froggy friend, um, who has
Frogger.
left us the general comments. Yes, Mr. Frogger, Mr. Frogger. And that's all I got to say about that. Also, you can find us on Spotify, TuneIn. If anybody uses TuneIn, we'll be getting our stuff on Apple real soon. And you can also find us at whydoesthisexistpodcast.podbean.com. So thank you so much, and we appreciate you. And remember, question everything.
Hey, that's RT's saying.
Yeah, well,
lawsuit.
well, here's another one.
All right.
All right. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.